As we remember 9/11 this year, we're turning our focus to the search and rescue dogs of September 11th in a three-part series called The Dogs of 9/11. First, we tell you about a man who was blind and was able to escape the collapse of the Twin Towers with the help of his service dog.
Literally in the blink of an eye, and everything changed and the world had changed forever.
Michael Hinkson has been blind from birth. On September 11th, he and his service dog, Roselle, were on the 78th floor of the North Tower. As Michael was getting ready for a seminar, the first plane hit the North Tower, 18 floors above him.
I began smelling an odor almost as soon as we got to the stairwell. I was smelling the fumes from burning jet fuel.
Michael says Roselle guided him down 1,463 steps. His co-worker David was slightly ahead of him.
At about the 50th floor, David suddenly said, "Mike, we're going to die. We're not going to make it out of here." And I just said, "Stop it, David. If Roselle and I can go down these stairs, so can you."
Michael, Roselle, and David finally made it outside by 9:45 a.m. Only minutes later, the South Tower collapsed. Roselle was guiding Michael through the chaotic, dust-filled streets of Lower Manhattan.
When we were running from Towers 2's collapse, I was relying on Roselle to make sure that we didn't crash into people.
Roselle eventually led Michael to the Fulton Street subway station where they took cover. Roselle remained Michael's service dog for another 6 years. To honor his four-legged hero, Michael wrote Thunderdog, a book about their incredible bond and trust in each other.
Will you be thinking about Roselle this 9/11?
Oh, always. Think about Roselle every day.
Roselle passed away in 2011, but her legacy lives on in the 9/11 Museum and in the heart of Michael Hinkson. Hinkson now has another guide dog, a black lab named Alamo. And now, in part 2 of the Dogs of 9/11, we bring you the story of two NYPD officers from Long Island who work side by side with their canines at Ground Zero, searching for remains. Their work together not only created a special bond, it brought families the closure they needed. NYPD K-9 officers Frank Valero of Lindenhurst and Pete Davis of Greenlawn rushed to the Twin Towers on 9/11 just as the second tower collapsed.
It was just surreal.
With their dogs right by their side.
We pulled up and then we got right to work.
Frank and his K-9 Samson and Pete and his K-9 Apollo desperately searched.
It was pretty chaotic. I mean, it was dark.
In the cloud of dust and smoke, combing through the wreckage for any signs of life.
Tried to see if we find any survivors, and we didn't at that time.
For the next 8 months, in the dangerous conditions at Ground Zero, the officers and their dogs were equal partners and worked just as hard as the other.
We found quite a bit of remains, hopefully finding people that come closures for families.
At the end of their shift, veterinarians were on site to help with burns and cuts on their paws or dehydration. The dogs were covered in contaminants and had to be washed every night.
It's amazing what they can do.
The dogs are motivated just to work. That's what makes them happy. They don't really need a lot of motivation.
Frank says the dogs were able to detect even the smallest fragments of DNA in the rubble, and it allowed investigators to identify many of the almost 3,000 people killed at Ground Zero.
I'm proud of what they did. Wouldn't have happened without the dogs.
Their work is forever recognized at the 9/11 Museum and here on Long Island, where two monuments in Lindenhurst and Farmingdale stand to pay tribute to their commitment.
We couldn't have done it without them.
And even though Samson and Apollo are no longer here, the canine human bond will never be broken or forgotten.
The bond is the bond. You know, the dog is part of your family. They're with you 24 hours a day.
And to conclude our special series, The Dogs of 9/11, I spoke to a 9/11 first responder from Holdsville who was matched up with a service dog that turned out to be much more than just man's best friend.
We didn't want to give up yet.
FDNY firefighter Tom Prinn Jr. of Holtsville was one of countless first responders who rushed to Ground Zero hoping to find survivors.
It wasn't a search and rescue anymore. It was really just a recovery.
In the days and weeks that followed, Tom remembered seeing canine search and rescue dogs alongside him on the pile.
And you could see this dog's paws were getting cut up, and it was a really tough environment. No matter what, though, that dog just kept going. And I was just so impressed.
After 9/11, Tom continued to work as an FDNY firefighter. In 2006, he fell on a fire escape while fighting a fire in Brooklyn. Doctors delivered the bad news.
You have a fractured vertebrae. I had 2 spinal surgeries within that year.
He had an additional 4 spinal surgeries after that and suffered with severe back pain.
I couldn't tie my own shoes. You just feel like you just want to surrender.
But Tom didn't give up. He had heard about Canine Companions. The nonprofit matches people living with disabilities with service dogs free of charge. At first, he didn't think he was a good candidate
Good girl.
until he met his perfect match, a yellow lab named Halona.
Really what I needed was a dog that can pick things up, open my drawers. She's done more for us than anybody will ever know.
As a firefighter, Tom's job is to rescue people, but he never thought that he would be the one who needed to be rescued.
My mental health was just not in a great spot.
Tom says Halona has helped him get his life back.
Come on, girl.
Now he hopes that other 9/11 first responders won't be afraid to ask for help as well.
To be able to offer a dog that's going to change not just your life, but your whole family's life, you can't put a price tag on that.
And if you'd like more information about the Long Island chapter of Canine Companions, we have a link on our website, news12.com.